Well, I I made note of a couple of things I wanted to talk about. I don't know if I actually have time. I just wanted to discuss out loud some things. It seems to help me. And if you ever have a question, you can make a comment and we'll discuss that. But I noticed recently that one of the things to watch out for is, well, let me put a question to you. Do you ever think your beliefs are knowing? I mean, do you ever think your beliefs are it's knowing the truth? You know that belief is true without the experience of it. Because I found that in me recently. So that's one of the things that keeps reminding me that I'm not separate, is that understanding that my beliefs were just beliefs, but I believe them so strongly in my life because I remember feeling knowing, I felt knowing that we were all one. We're all one, and that we are all made from the same thing. And I still find myself, when I've asked myself, are you aware? And who is the one that is aware? And gone back before there's objects and feelings and senses. And, I've had the experience of that infinite love and oneness. But when I used the word oneness, which I did a lot, I still would be very personal with it. I loved my husband, I loved my friend, I loved a tree, I wasn't love, but I loved each individual thing. And recently, I was reflecting and realizing how, because I actually have been moving away from that, but when I contemplated how deep that was, it was definitely a thing for me to watch for, are just things that, these beliefs that we think that are just melted into us so strongly and deeply that it's really hard to recognize when you're doing it and the difference. So what really stood out with me is understanding is the difference. And because before, when I used to think of oneness, I felt it. I didn't have to understand it. I felt it and I knew it. It's that simple. But funny thing, later in my life, much later, I began to when I started spiritually searching, I don't like that word, but anyway, because it's used so many ways. It's used religiously and whatever. Anyway, so when I started using my head, I guess you'd say, because I floated through life by my feelings, and And I had all these things that I just know, I know, I know. It's the truth. Um, so when I challenge that by thinking and understanding and asking myself, going into myself, and actually it was my studies that were asking me the question that I hadn't asked myself. And so when that started happening and I started answering those questions that people were asking, and these different spiritual practices were asking, because I studied a lot of different ones, it started having me ask my own questions about some things, about that in particular, the oneness, because that comes up in every religion. And a lot of religions come from a separate place with that until years and years down the road, and then they bring you into the oneness because they feel like you can't do it directly, or it's easier to take a path there instead of directly, because that's a long jump or a big jump, which it is. So when I started asking myself questions and understanding it more and more, the way I was looking at oneness, I was still saying it, feeling it, and it is a truth, but it wasn't from the way I was seeing it. It was the truth for me, but it was not the whole truth because of the way I was. And still, we look at things from our finite minds, so nothing I say is absolutely true, but I feel like I opened up to it not being so personal. It's not I love this and I love that and I am one with everything, because I love it, and I love this and I love you and I love the tree and all of that. It becomes impersonal, and that I am love, because love is the foundation of awareness without things and feelings and thoughts, and the purity of just pure being is love. So if I abide in that, that's a word that Rupert uses that I like. But if I rest in that, the difference is one suffers and one doesn't. I'll tell you that. So that is just something to watch out for. So ask yourself that question. Am I just saying, I believe that's true, and just knowing it? Just knowing it. You just know it. And experience doesn't come into play. And then you might question it, or you might just look at it just to understand it. I mean, in a soft, loving way, just, whatever it is for you. So that was really on my mind to speak about, and the personal aspect. I think that's interesting because you want to push that away because you want everything to be very personal and intimate, and it is actually more intimate when you are love and not loving a thing. It caressing the purity of what that means and what that feels is so much more intimate, but you don't see that when you know something, you block out everything else. So you don't want to do that either. But everything is a truth for you. And I feel like I've opened up so much. So I'm glad I was able to discuss that tonight. What else was I going to discuss? I would love for you to ask a question so we can discuss it. But that's about it for now. I'm sure something else will pop up. I keep learning more and more about myself every single day. Things just open up and come to me, and I love discussing it, even if it's, just discussing it in the universe. I'm talking to myself, to awareness. That's it for now.